Okay, now I would like to show another game that I won in the English opening, just like that game against Axel Bachmann. And finally, that once again I won with the wrong tactics, or the way I call it. If my game against, if wrong tactics in my game against Axel Bachmann at least had an excuse that I followed the known idea of Tomasz Markowski, just that in that position that idea was not entirely correct. Here, in this game, I was just inventing my own things, which would normally have to bring me the zero. Well, I'm happy that this wrong tactic still brought me the point at the tournament table, and therefore I decided to present this game on this DVD. This is so far my last tournament game, which was played 8 days ago. So now there is a reason for me to think how to distinguish wrong tactics from right tactics, not just in home analysis but also during the game. It was played in Bundesliga in Bremen in the match Emstetten against Baden-Baden. My opponent was Dutch international master Ruud Janssen, and he was white. And he played English opening. c4, e5, g3, knight c6, knight c3, g6. So I'm playing the same setup as against Axel Bachmann, but Ruud goes slightly differently. He plays bishop g2, bishop g7, and he immediately goes for e4. He does not do moves like rook b1 or a3 yet. He prefers to develop his king side first. Okay, then I played after e4 d6, knight g2, f5, d3, knight f6, white castled short, and I also castled short. Okay, interestingly enough, we have now exactly the same position as in Markowski-Smiryan game, but with the reverse color. And that also means that it's now whites to move, while in Markowski-Smiryan game, okay, it was also whites to move, but in a similar position he played f5. Okay, this position would be f4. And as we already know, after that, Smiryan's position was quite dangerous and Markowski won a brilliant game. So here it's a good example of what white can do having a tempo. Well, we all know how important thing in chess is to have a tempo. But then the question is, so if I get f4, I'm better, that's clear. But is white better if he prevents it, or it's only equal? My opinion is the second one, that it's just equal. That in an opening position, one tempo is very important, but still it does not give this drastic importance yet. But somewhere on the positions which can be already simplified, then the meaning of one tempo is even more. Okay, so Ruud played knight d5, and I decided to go knight h5, so I'm still threatening f4 and trying to get the same kind of ideas that in my game against Bachmann or in the game Markowski-Smiryan. So here Ruud decided to take on f5 in order me not to have those ideas at all. So once I took with the bishop on f5, my pawn can no longer go to f4. And he goes h3. Okay, in my opinion, it's a good thing that I could take on f5 with the bishop from c8. In that sense, I won a tempo already. So I played bishop e6. I must say that I was very optimistic about my position. He played rook b1, so now starting with his normal plan of b4, b5, queen d7, g4, knight f6, and Ruud played b4. Yes, maybe there is one thing I can mention, that if he didn't play g4, if he played king h2, sometimes in some lines I can sacrifice exchange on f4. For example, I can play knight d4. We can already know the similar idea from my game against Bachman, or better to say my annotations of my commentaries on that game. So, very good thing that my pawn is not on a5, so I'm indeed threatening c6. And, for example, after b4, c6, knight f4, I can sacrifice the exchange on f4, get bishop h6, two very active bishops, a pawn that I will take on f4, and black is probably better despite the exchange down. So, as I said, this would be if he played king g2, king h2, but rook played g4, knight f6, and then he played b4. And I took the decision which really I find very hard to explain. I saw the correct move, which was h5. But I did not make it. I don't know why. My opponent now was going to play g5, and I think after knight h7, black's position is already better. Because I have my pieces aiming for his king. And I have no weaknesses whatsoever in my position. So I can basically think about any reasonable attacking plan. It will just be good. But I got concerned about white taking on f6, because I calculated this variation. Bishop f6, pawn takes h5. Okay, now if I take king h2, white is fine. Black king somehow is more open than my king, so black cannot be better. Also, the control on white squares is good. And then I thought I can take on h3, hg, and play bishop g4, pinning the knight. And I got concerned about queen d2 move, threatening bishop d5 check and queen h6 mate. Of course, I'm not going to blunder this mate, but somehow the feeling was that after queen d2, white stands quite well. And okay, I saw that I can take on g2, play queen g4, knight g3, queen takes g6, but it seems to me that the position is very simplified, white is a little bit better, so most probably the outcome would be the draw. However, what I missed here is that I could take also with the rook. Well, in fact I looked at this, but I thought that white would have a strong intermediate move, bishop g5, and use it for completing his development. Here I missed that I have a very strong idea of sacrificing the exchange, taking on g4, taking on h3, and taking one more piece on g2. So the pawn in last, I think among last 5 moves, 4 of them were with the pawn h5, hg, gh, hg again. The only move which was not with the pawn was rook takes f6. An amazing career for the pawn, but I think black is better after that. Unfortunately, this was the opportunity that I missed, and that means that I missed not just an opportunity to equalize, but also to probably get a better game. Okay, then when one starts looking at this with the computer, one finds that white probably keeps equal chances after b5. Okay, but first it's a computer, second it's only equal chances. And hard to understand why, having seen the right move h5 and having calculated quite a lot, I finally chose the wrong thing. I took on d5, I played knight e7, so root played queen b3, and now at least I could have thought about preventing some of his active plans, but I'm just thinking about b5. But okay, then bishop b2, rook c1. White is probably slightly better. So I played h5, g5, knight h7, and white quietly develops bishop b2, bishop d2. Here I started realizing that I probably did something really wrong and that my position is getting worse and worse. Still, bishop d2 is not the most precise move by white. You know why? Because now I could play b5 and then knight h5, and my plan is to bring knight on h4. I played knight f5 immediately, and of course rook played queen c4. Controlling h4 square. After b5 I'm still alright. So that means that also Ruud made a mistake. He should have played queen c4 one move earlier. And that means that maybe instead of h5 I had to play b5. So sometimes this move is so important just to not to bring white queen on the fourth rank. And this would be prophylaxis, to play b5 and then h5, g5, knight h7, and then with the plan knight f5, knight h4. All this, but starting with the move b5. It's almost impossible to find such an idea on the game, and I'm not even sure whether it's correct. So, okay, as we said, queen c4 was what Ruud had to play. Here b5 is what I had to play, but I played this. And we got this position where wrong tactic started. I can say that black's position is not especially nice, but still it's not yet lost. For example, I had the move rook e8. Now my threat is to play exactly what I played in the game. Queen d8, h4, e4, and then take the pawn on h4. So white most probably would have to put his queen on e4, blockading the e5 square, but queen in general is not a good blocker. So after that I could play maybe rook f7, bring my knight to f8. Okay, I'm slightly worse, I'm passive, but it's a game. Instead of this I just couldn't stop myself, went for tactics which was completely unsound. I played queen d8, h4, I played e4. Okay, now if white takes on e4, then I'm doing fine. For example, f4, taking on g2, queen d7, white king is exposed, everything is excellent. But, of course, white is not obliged to do that. And white goes knight f4. And if I take on h4, white goes knight d7, knight e6, with the idea that after queen e7, white simply take the pawn on e4. And with the knight on e6 and control on the center, white is winning. So what can I do after knight f4? Well, I saw knight f4, but until the last moment I could not believe how strong it was. For example, I thought that I could play knight d4, knight e6, knight takes e6, pawn takes, now e7 is threatening, and I could play d5. No, but I cannot do this, because white plays e7. So if queen takes e7, queen takes d5, I'm just losing the pawn. So I must think about taking on c4, but then after taking on d8 with the queen, rook takes d8, bishop takes c4, I am practically lost because my pawn on g6 is just horrible. It's so with this bishop pair, white gets practically winning endgame advantage. So here finally I sacrificed the knight on g5, thinking that black would still be alright after h takes, queen takes e4, rook e8, queen f3, knight d4, queen g3, knight e2 check, knight takes e2, queen takes d2, and I thought that I would win back the piece. I completely missed that white has this move knight c1, although saving this extra piece. And even though now white is relatively passive and black can try to create some threats against the king, but in this case white has enough pieces to defend the king. And okay, I checked this afterwards with the computer, there are no real attacking plans. So one can only guess whether I would have any saving chances if he had found this. I have to say that during the game, as I said, I was very optimistic about this position after this sacrifice. I thought that queen takes e4 didn't really work, so I was looking at for my opponent knight e6, queen takes d2, pawn takes e4. This position is very complicated. Maybe black is better, maybe not, but at least here is a lot of fight. But okay, as I said, the refutation of my tactics was very simple. That it was just to take the knight and then just to take the pawn with the queen, and there are no variations that really work for black tactically. So most probably, if root played like this, I would have lost this game. In the very bad case, I would be able to make a draw. But this was my lucky day, because root thought for 15 minutes and went for something else. He went knight takes g6. After knight takes g6, I immediately realized that I'm not in danger at all, because I saw that after knight f3 check, bishop takes f3. If I want to make a draw, I can just play knight d4, attacking the bishop. Bishop takes e4, b5, and white queen is trapped. Unfortunately, even though white queen is trapped, he can still save this game by playing bishop g5, queen d7, knight e7 check, king h8, knight g6 check, and it's perpetual check. So still it was already a good feeling for me, because I knew that draw I had in any case, and I can look for more than that. And it was not so difficult to find more than that. I saw that instead of this knight d4 move, I can just take on f3. And here root made his final mistake. He played knight takes f8. He took my rook, after which he is completely lost. He could still play bishop g5, and after queen d7, so now I want to play knight d4 obviously and bring my queen to his camp, to his king. But with queen f4, bringing the queen into the defense, white would still keep reasonable chances to survive. Okay, but as I said, I knew that here I would be at least not worse, so I was happy about this position. Yeah. So root, as I said, took on f8, after which, bishop is on d2. I played knight d4, cutting the queen from defense of white king, and even more, also threatening b5. Well, exactly this threat of b5 Root missed, because he saw that after bishop g5, queen takes f8, I would come with my queen to f5 and give mate. This he saw, but he thought that after knight e6, he manages to defend everything. He missed that after b5, the only square for queen is c1, but then knight e2 check and I still win the queen. Okay, so here, of course, the game finishes immediately. He played bishop g5, queen d7, queen takes d4, bishop takes d4, knight f4. Okay, he defended from the immediate mate, but after bishop e5, knight e6, queen f7, my queen still comes from f5 and gives the mate. So obviously after queen f7, Root finally resigned. Okay, of course, I have very mixed feelings about this, as I said, so far my last tournament game. It's nice to win the game. It's also nice to play the game with a lot of complications and lots of tactics. But it feels strange that you created some wrong tactics that you could have lost that game. That's something that every chess player should try to avoid, and I'm not an exception. But okay, it's an entertaining game, and chess is like this. So let's hope that. So now it's my turn to. Now we should turn to real tactics. I mean, to the right tactics, not the tactics that later get refuted by the computers and also by humans.